This video is going to be about the bass clef. So the worksheet you're going to need is called Fillable the Bass Clef, and you can find it on my MCPS classroom you go to Files, and then Notes, and then Staff, and then the worksheet is called Fillable the Bass Clef. I will show you what that looks like now. It also says Lesson 3 at the top. So we've already talked about the treble clef. The bass clef is also called the F clef, and it looks like this. So if we were together in person, then what we would do next is practice drawing the bass clef, and you can kind of follow along with what they're telling you to do in the top part of this worksheet. And if you were to do that then and follow their instructions, it would look like this. Go ahead and look at my screen if you're not already. It will just look like this. And then you would add the two little dots. And it's important to memorize that the two little dots go above and below line number 4. Because line number 4 is actually the letter F on the bass clef, and that's why we call it the F clef. So if you're ever drawing the bass clef, you got to make sure those two dots go in the correct place. We'll practice that when we come back together in person. And underneath that, it says the bass clef establishes the note F on the 4th line of the bass staff. So that's a good one to memorize. But like I said with the treble clef, one of the easiest ways to memorize the lines and the spaces is to just memorize what line number 1 is. Because we talked about that in all music, when we're looking at a staff, the notes are always going to go in the order of A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then they start over after you get to G. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and it just keeps on going forever and ever. So as long as you know what line number 1 is, you should know what the rest of them are, because on the treble clef, we said line number 1 is E. On the bass clef, line number 1 is going to be letter G, which means it would start right here. So if I keep going up on the bass clef, line, space, line, space, line, space, line, space, line, the rest of these are going to follow in that order. G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, just like that. So again, the important thing to remember also when you're trying to remember what the letter names are of the lines and the spaces is that it's always going to alternate line, space, line, space, line, space, line, space, line. So that first one, letter G, is on a line, A is on a space, B is on a line, C is on a space, and then so forth until you get to the top. So that's important to remember when you're trying to figure out what the letter names are of those lines and spaces. It also says underneath that, in the beginning, to help you remember the lines and the spaces, you may wish to make up a saying that uses the letters of the lines and the spaces. For example, to remember the bass clef lines, some people use good boys do fine always, and that'll give you G, B, D, F, A, which are all of the lines of the bass clef. So if you want to use that, you can. And the bass clef spaces, a lot of people like to use all cows eat grass. And there's A, C, E, G. All cows eat grass. Remember, both of those sayings are going to go from the bottom to the top, from line 1 or space 1 to line 5 or space 4. So you can use those if you want to, but again, I think it's easiest to just memorize that line 1 of the treble clef is E, and line 1 of the bass clef is G. Those are some really easy ways to memorize that, because then you can figure out what all of the rest of the notes are. So now we're going to scroll down to the bottom of the page where these blank spaces are. We are not going to draw the bass clef at the beginning of the line because we'll do that when we're in person. We are going to name the notes indicated though. So you can go ahead and look at your worksheet if you're not already. And on number 1, we can see that that note is on line number 4. So again, we memorized that the first line of the bass clef is G. So all I have to do after that is count up from line 1 to line 4 where that note is on number 1 in the musical alphabet, and I should be able to figure out what that letter is. So if line number 1 is G, That means the space above it, according to the musical alphabet, is going to be A. And you can go ahead and look at my screen while I'm doing this because I'm kind of reminding you about how to actually label these notes. The line above A is going to be letter B. The space above letter B is going to be C. The line above C is going to be letter D. Space above that is going to be letter E. And then we finally get to the note we're looking for, which is line number 4, and it is letter F. So that means on number 1, we're going to put letter F. And you can go ahead and fill that in on your worksheet as well. So then we'll move on to number 2. Number 2 is a note that is on space number 2. So again, if I count up from the bottom, you could take your finger or your mouse cursor, or if you have like a pen or a pencil nearby, just don't write on your computer, but kind of count up from that first line. So the first line's G, above that is A, above that is B, and then the note that we're looking for is C on line number 2. So for number 2, or on space number 2, for number 2, we're going to put letter C. Then we'll go ahead and go on to number 3. Again, we're just going to start from letter G at the very bottom and we'll count up to that note. So line number 1 is G, the space above that is A, the line above that is B, the space above that is C, the line above that is D, the line above that is E, or space, sorry. The line above that is F, the space above that is G, and then the line above that at the very top is going to be A. So we just went G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, just like that. Then on number 4, that note is on space number 3. So we're going to count out space number 3 from the bottom. So line number 1 is G. Then we're going to go G, A, B, C, D, E. And then E would be our answer for number 4. Number 5 is pretty easy because it's just right above that line. So since line number 1 is G, the space above that, which is where number 5 is going to be letter A. Number 6 is even easier because we memorized that line number 1 is G, and number 6, the note actually is on line number 1. So we know that that one's letter G. Then number 7, again, we'll start at letter G on the bottom and we'll count up. We're just going to go G, A, B. So our answer for number 7 is B. Then on number 8, we're going to go down to the bottom and we'll count up from G. So there's G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So then our answer for number 8 on space number 4 is letter G. Then on number 9, we'll start at the bottom one more time. We've got G, A, B, C, D. So number 9, line number 3 is going to be letter D. So then our next little practice section here says, write the line or space that the note would appear on. So normally what we would do is draw the bass clef at the beginning, and then whatever letter it tells you, what you would be doing is drawing the note where it's supposed to go based on the letter they gave you. And you can use, look at my screen for a second, if you're not already. You can use this little cheat sheet area where it says notes are named after the first 7 letters of the alphabet. You can use this cheat sheet area to know which one is which, if you're not good at counting them yet. So on number 2, we went ahead and did the first one for you. So it asked you to draw or tell it where letter D would go on the staff. So I'm going to figure out where letter D is first. And remember, all I have to do is start at the bottom where line G would be on, which is line number 1, and then count up until I get to letter D. So I'm going to go G, A, B, C, D. And if I count up like that, I'm going to stop on line number 3. So that means my answer for that one would be line number 3, which is what's written there. So normally in person, or if we had a program that could do this easily, we would draw a note on line number 3. But since we can't do that, we're just going to write line 3. So we'll go ahead and do the same thing on number 10. On number 10, the letter is G. Now we know that line number 1 is letter G. So that means for number 10, I can actually just put line number 1. I'm just going to put L1 so that it fits in that box. Then for number 11, again, we'll start at the bottom and we'll count up until we hit letter B. So line number 1 is G. The next space is A. The next line is B. So that means I just stopped on line number 2. My answer for 11 is going to be line 2. On number 12, we've already been asked for letter G, so I think let's try and find a different one this time. So we'll start at the bottom and count up until we find another letter G. So we're going to go G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And the one that I just stopped on is space number 4. So I'm going to put space number 4 for number 12. Then on number 13, what it's asking for is letter A. So that one should be pretty easy. Since line number 1 is G, the space right above that is going to be A. So that'll be space number 1 is letter A. Then on number 14, the next one we're looking for is letter E. So we'll start at the bottom and count up until we find letter E. We've got G, A, B, C, D, E. And the one that I just stopped on is space number 3. So I'm going to put space 3 for number 14. That's where we would draw the note E. Then on number 15, I'm looking for letter A, which I already did on number 13. So I'm going to keep going until I find a different one. So I'll start at the bottom and I'll count past that first space. So we're going to go G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. So our top line, which is line number 5, is going to be where that other option for letter A is. So that's line number 5 for number 15. Then on number 16, we're looking for letter C. So we'll start at the bottom with line number 1, which is G, and we'll count up. G, A, B, C. So that means space number 2 is going to be letter C. So I'll put space 2 for number 16. Then the last one in this section is looking for letter E. And we actually did already give this one a letter E, and there's not going to be another one that's on this staff. So we're just going to go ahead and put space number 3 for number 17 again. So that'll be the same as number 14. Space number 3. And if you are looking at your own worksheet, go ahead and click back to my screen. The very last section of this says name the notes, because we're not going to draw the bass clef at the beginning for now. Name the notes. Then, using H and L, indicate if the first note of each set sounds higher or lower than the second note. So, we did the first one for you. What we did was look at that first note, which is on space number 1. We figured out that it's letter A. Then we figured out by looking at these 2 notes that the first one is lower than the second one. So we're going to say A is lower than, and then the second note, we got to figure out that it's letter C. So our whole answer there is A is lower than C. So you can click back to your screen. We're going to start at number 18. So first thing we got to do is figure out what that first note is. So I'm going to count up from the bottom, from letter G, and figure out what that note is. G, A, B, C, D, E, F. So F is going to be that note on number 18. Then if I look at these two notes, I can see that that F is higher than the second note. So I'm going to say F is H for higher. And then that second note, we'll count it from the bottom to figure out what it is. We'll go G, A, B, C, D. So then our whole sentence on number 18 is going to be F is higher than D. And again, make sure when you're counting up from the bottom that you are looking at each line space, line space, line space, line space, line. That you're looking at each one individually and you are counting those up one at a time like I'm doing on my screen. You can do that with your finger and point to each one, or you can take a little pencil and do it that way, or you can take your mouse cursor and do it that way. So on number 19, we'll do the same thing with that first note. Let's figure out what it is. G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. So that first note on number 19 is letter A, and it looks like it's definitely higher than that second note. So I'm going to say A is H, and then we'll figure out that that second note is letter G, since it's on line number 1, and line number 1 is the exact one that we memorized. So that's letter G. So the whole sentence on number 19 is going to see A is higher than G. Then we'll move on to number 20. So let's figure out what that first note is by counting up from the first line. G, A, B. So that first note is going to be letter B. And if we look at the second one, you should be able to tell that the first note is lower than the second note. So I'm going to say B is L for lower, and then we'll count up from G to figure out what that second note is. So we'll go G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So now we know that that whole sentence is on number 20 is going to read B is lower than G. Then on number 21, again, first thing we got to do is figure out what that first note is. So let's count up from letter G. G, A, B, C, D. So we'll put D, and then we'll notice that that first note is lower than the second note. So we'll say D is L for lower, and then that second note, we'll count up from the bottom to figure out what it is. G, A, B, C, D, E, F. Then the whole sentence on number 21 is going to say D is lower than F. So for this last one on number 22, again, we're going to figure out what that first note is by counting up from letter G. G, A, B, C, D, E. So E is our first note, and it looks like it's definitely higher than the second note. So we're going to say E is H for higher, and then that second note, again, is on line number 1, which is the line we memorized. So we already know that that one's going to be letter G. So the whole sentence on number 22 is going to say E is higher than G. So now that you've made it to the end of this worksheet, go ahead and look back at my screen. Remember that if you are on a Mac, you're going to go up here and click the name to change it to say your name, thebassclef.pdf. You'll hit enter to save it. And if you are not on a Mac, if you are on if you are on a Chromebook or some other kind of PC and you have this open in Google Chrome right now, you should see a download button in the top right hand corner of the screen. You're going to click that button and it's going to come up and it's going to say new. We're not going to click that. It's going to say fillable, the bassclef.pdf. You're going to go in that box where it says that, highlight the word fillable and change it to say your name. That way the whole thing will say your name, the bassclef.pdf. And then you're going to click the save button to the right of that. And if you're on Cami, I bet you already know what to do. After that, you guys, after you've saved the version with your answers to the downloads folder on your computer, remember you're just going to upload it to your course Google Drive folder. And then you're done.